Hello, and welcome to the Birdwatching channel. This is Sharon Sorensen, your host and fellow birdwatcher, to talk to you about the bird magnet you need in your yard, a bubbling rock. Most of us started out with bird baths on pedestals or even bird baths situated directly on the ground. And then we faced a change in priorities because there were bans on standing water as the result of West Nile virus. And so we recognize the importance of moving water, not just as mosquito protection, but also as a bird attraction. They love the sound of moving water and it draws them like a magnet. So the bubbling rock entered the picture. The relative size of this one best illustrated by the little Carolina chickadee taking a bath. You will find birds coming to a bubble rock that would never come to feeders. Illustration, 6 warblers at one time on this bubble rock. If that doesn't sell you on the importance of a bubble rock, I don't know what would. So you can build your own or have it built. Just share this video with your landscaper or whoever you may be having to build it for you. You should build it to suit your own space and place, to suit your own personal choices. You can build it in ground or above ground. So I'm just going to share some ideas that you can adapt to suit yourself. The components you will need are some rocks. We'll talk more about that later. A reservoir. We chose a 40-gallon cattle watering tub. Some wire mesh to put over the top of the tub to hold the landscaping and the bubble rocks in place. The support pipes to do just that. A fountain pump, and for this size tub we found that a 120-gallon-an-hour pump was more than sufficient. Some vinyl tubing that's going to run from the pump up through the bubble rock. That's determined, you need about 4 feet of it, but the diameter is determined by the pump you choose. And then in the winter, you'll need a submersible heater. We chose a 250-watt thermostatically controlled heater for this 40-gallon reservoir. So you'll need some other supplies. You'll need a shovel, a level, some sand for leveling and cushioning your reservoir. You'll need a hammer drill and bits, some wire cutters, a hammer, and you need access to an electrical outlet with ground fault circuit interrupter so you don't get shocked. And you'll need some surround landscaping, whether that be rocks or some fill or some sort of vegetation, and that will vary as widely as the people who are watching this will vary. So let's talk about those rocks. First of all, they need to be numerous enough to stack. You're not going to create the sound of flowing water if there isn't any place for the water to flow. So I like 3 sizable rocks that are stackable. They need to be small enough to pick up. You individually must be able to pick up these rocks. If they haul them in with a backhoe, then they're going to need a backhoe for you to maintain your reservoir, and that's not going to work. So determine the size rock by whether or not you can pick it up. It also needs to be small enough to fit within the reservoir's perimeters, because after all, as the water splashes over the edge, you want it to be sure that it splashes inside the reservoir and not outside it. That top rock especially needs to be thin enough to drill through, but a hammer drill will go through something maybe even 4 to 6 inches. It just takes a little longer to get it drilled. And then you need it to be irregular enough for some puddles for the birds to bathe in. So here's the set of 3 that I chose for the most recent one that we've built. You'll notice that the center rock is a little bit larger than the others. That allows water to spill over. And the top rock, compared to the bottom rock, still fits within the perimeter of the tub. And that's essential so that the water doesn't run over the edge of your tub. And then we can drill through that top rock to run the vinyl tubing. So next step, choose a location. It needs to be a spot with a clear view for you from a favorite window, near enough to see well, but far enough away to see well. In other words, don't put it up against the side of the house where you have to stick your nose on the window to see it and then scare all the birds away. It needs to be a spot with a clear view for birds too, because they need to feel safe, they need to have an escape route, and of course you need electricity with that ground fault circuit interrupter in order to plug in the pump for the reservoir. It needs to be a spot free from roots and other obstacles so that you can dig this hole successfully and not have root interference with your reservoir once it's in place. So you dig the hole slightly larger than the reservoir itself and allow about 2 to 4 inches to remain above the surface of the yards. That's so when it rains, the rainwater doesn't run into the tub and fill it with debris. Then you'll add a layer of sand for leveling to protect the reservoir bottom, and level the reservoir, keeping the rim again a few inches above ground so that rainwater doesn't wash dirt into it. Then you're ready to build the support stuff. And we use PVC pipes that we cut about an inch shorter than the height of the reservoir so we wouldn't be splashing water over the edge. We put them together with screws for more stable support, but again, that's a personal choice how you handle that. And arrange the pipes so that you can see that you're going to be able to support whatever it is you're going to put on top, not just the rocks with the hole in them, but also any kind of landscaping. You'll need to cover that with wire mesh. The wire mesh is up to you. It depends on what you're going to put over the top of this reservoir. That determines the size of the mesh. So then, with everything in place, you're ready to go and plan the rock placement, just to make sure everything's going to fit in place. You'll determine where to drill the bubbler hole, and in this case, we chose a little indentation in the rock that sort of gave a tiny little place for the water to accumulate, to give birds a little place to take a bath. You'll drill a hole the size that will accept whatever tubing you're using that connects to your pump. And unless you're using an industrial drill, you're going to begin with a smaller bit and move progressively larger as you drill. Probably you're going to need some water flowing to keep that bit cool, because it is pretty tough drilling through some of these rocks, depending on what kind of rock you have, of course. So, no matter what you're drilling with, whether it's a hammer drill or somebody's big industrial drill, you're always going to plug that into a ground fault circuit interrupter receptacle so that when you're near water, as you will be, you're avoiding electrical shock. Once you have the tub in the hole and the rocks in place, you're ready to begin the final assembly, and you will cut an access opening because you will always need to be able to access your pump and to be able to access the reservoir for cleaning. You'll cut that cover in place, hammer it around to hold it in place, and you're set to go. Put that tubing to the pump, run the tubing up through the drilled hole. That's just a matter of zip zip and you're done. Put the pump down and plug it into that ground fault circuit interrupter, and the water is flowing. You'll notice that we've used gravel on the surround. We chose later to eliminate that. We felt it impeded the flow of the water, and while we liked the look of it, we ultimately moved to larger rocks because of the flow. And you'll notice that after the bubbler has been there for a while, that moss accumulates and makes it look more natural. Maintenance becomes your only responsibility after that. You check the water levels weekly, and while I do that weekly, I rarely have to fill my 40-gallon reservoir more than once a month. Not even that if it rains, but that if it's windy or it's get really dry and the humidity is really low. I check the water flow regularly, like daily, because occasionally a leaf or something will get into the filter of the pump and maybe just clog it up briefly. I clean it at least twice a year, sometimes more often, but not usually, because I just use a wet vac and a hose with a nozzle. I suck all the water out. I use a really stiff flow of water and a strong nozzle to wash any debris loose and let it circulate and suck all that out again. Fill it again, maybe forcing some more water. I do that 2 or 3 times, and by that time everything's sparkling clean inside and I can refill it. I add that submersible thermostatically controlled heater in the winter, so you see these 3 bluebirds there in the snow, but the water is open. With that thermostatically controlled winter, we've had multiple days in a row of sub-zero weather, and the bubble rock has kept flowing. So when you get bluebirds and doves and cardinals in the midst of ice and snow, you know that things are working right. And I'm telling you folks, it is indeed a bird magnet year-round. I want you to enjoy your own variations to this general plan we're presenting, suitable to your own space and place and your own personal choice. And just know that you too are most likely to have a good many species that come to your bubbler that would never come to a feeder. We've had things like chestnut-sided warbler. We've had a little battle between an American goldfinch and a prothonotary warbler over the watering space. We've had first-year male summer tanagers. We've had female Baltimore orioles. We've had indigo buntings and about 90 other species who have been on our bubbler. So I really would encourage you to put this magnet in place. Thank you for enjoying bird watching. I hope you like the bird magnet. If you want to know more about bird watching, consider one of my 3 books available online or in your favorite bookstore, or consider checking out my website, or join me on Facebook, where I try almost every day to post something about birds and bird habitat. Meanwhile, thank you for joining us. I wish you well in building a bird magnet in a bubble rock in your yard, and may you always have birds in your binoculars.